We are now going to have a presentation from Clara Semal, who's the Director for European Offshore Development and National Grid. Following that, we're going to have a little chat, she and I, on the stage, and if you have any questions in this area, you are now forewarned. We'll be very interested in hearing from them. So it's my great pleasure to invite Clara to join me on the stage.
Good afternoon, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency. I'm delighted to be here today at the UK-EU Forum to speak about a key aspect of future UK-EU cooperation, the energy and climate policy. Decades before the EU was founded, we recognized the importance of collaborating on energy, including with the European coal and steel community. There are three things I'll talk to you about today. Why is it so important for consumers that the UK and the EU cooperate on energy policy? Where our cooperation is currently, and what we as transmission operator are in the process of building in the UK and in Europe, and what we need to happen in the UK-EU energy relationship to make it work. So first, why? Why do we need the UK and the EU to cooperate on energy and climate? For three reasons, really: interdependency, competitiveness, and the North Sea, the beautiful place around it. On interdependence, despite the UK's withdrawal from the EU and the Brexit, which you heard a lot today, the UK and the EU are physically connected as an energy market. We continue to have the same challenge and the same objective in energy and climate policy. We both have legally binding net zero target for 2050 and are both committed to breaking our dependence on volatile gas market by developing homegrown green renewable energy. The UK is still physically part of the EU gas and electricity market. And as the Brexit negotiation team uncovered, you can't stop electrons at the frontier. They tend to flow from one country to another without customs. The UK was a key part of Europe's energy security in 2022. 16% in total of the gas that was used in Europe during the Russian invasion into EU gas storage came from the UK. And because much of the French nuclear fleet was an outage, the UK-French interconnector completely reserved the historical flow and imported power in the UK and into the EU and into France for that period. The second topic I want to bring is to competitiveness. Competitiveness and energy prices are key challenges, both for the UK and for Europe. We've all seen the Draghi reports, we've seen the reports, the graphs, and large numbers of other think tank reports from Baringa, Breakthrough Energy, or Grant Thornton over the last couple of months. They all say the same things. More collaboration will bring economical benefit for both. We've seen that the lack of competitiveness is partially structural. As Draghi points out, the Europe and the UK do not have a great deal of fossil fuel reserve left. Drill, baby, drill is not a policy that we can use, I'm afraid, in Europe or in the UK. But we still have barriers to the trade in electricity across our continent. We need to be able to move electricity from where it is produced to where it's needed. Solar and wind continue to make enormous strides, and the North Sea offshore wind has become a mature technology. Renewable costs have gone up in recent years, but it remains substantially down on where they were a decade ago. Which brings me to the North Sea. The potential of the North Sea is clear. In April 2023, 9 North Sea countries signed the Ostend Declaration, which sets out our cumulative objectives and ambition for the North Sea. Together, with all these countries, we want to build offshore renewable of 120 gigawatts by 2030 and 300 gigawatts by 2050. This is one of the first major UK engagement in Europe post-Brexit, testament to the focus placed on energy cooperation. Breakthrough Energy estimated end of last year that fully effective cooperation in the North Sea between the UK and the EU would save up to 44 billion pounds for customers on both sides of the channel every year. Energy is not like other sectors. It requires rules for cross-border trading due to the physical nature of the market. The negotiators who agreed the trade and cooperating agreement in 2019 understood this. And when the UK left the internal energy market, they left a number of mechanisms, including market coupling. The UK also unfortunately left the European network of TSO and SOE, the network of transmission system operator across Europe. Until now, there has been no formal mechanism for cooperation between the organizations that are building the grid across Europe. Combined with other issues, like the European Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, this is all making the full deployment of renewable offshore energy in the North Sea more and more difficult and more expensive for everyone. These barriers are costing UK and EU consumers and businesses billions of euros, and the CBAM alone would cause an annual carbon increase to 2 million cars on the road. So where is cooperation on energy climate at the moment? We have made some progress in the last few years. We have a memorandum of understanding with the UK joining the North Sea Energy Cooperation, NSEC, but we are not a full member yet. We're hoping for improvements there. And we understand that we're no longer part of the EU, but there are many technical issues that require the EU and UK authority to work together. Following that Ostende summit, National Grid joined in the Offshore Transmission System Cooperation to address how to build further infrastructure in the North Sea, how to share the costs and benefits across countries, and how we build a supply chain so that we can jointly meet our targets. As we deploy more infrastructure, we also need to consider joint planning of that infrastructure so we put the right cross-border project in the right places. We have one specific project we want to share a bit more around, which is LionLink. LionLink is a first-of-a-kind project. We in the UK, we're not scared of innovation. National Grid built that jointly with TenneT, the Dutch TSO. It would be the first interconnector that connects both two countries of 200 kilometers, but have a wind in the middle.
What's going on?
We have brought the same innovation in the North Sea that we have in the past. We've built the first interconnector between France and the UK over a decade ago. LionLink will be the first of these hybrid projects. It will bring 1.8 gigawatt power to 2.5 million of homes, providing huge amounts of flexibility to the UK and the Dutch markets. They bring like a huge complexity, both on the technical side, the financial side, and the regulatory side. And that's where the European Commission support for this project is very welcome. So what do we need to happen with the UK-EU reset? I'll mention just two things here, trading, and it's going to be a bit technical, I apologize in advance, and cross-border adjustment mechanism. So energy is a clear focus for the UK government. We've seen that in the past, and we welcome that. But there are two big issues that are still to be addressed. The trading was part of the trade cooperation agreement post-Brexit, and it is recognized as an area where it is very different to other sectors. Electricity is not traded in the same way as any other commodities. Generators sell the power exchange, who contract with interconnector to sell the electrons to neighboring countries. You need cross-border agreement to understand how this electrons flow. The TCA title and solution is not sufficient to make this work fully. We appreciate the proposal, which is a mouthful, multi-regional loose volume coupling, but we understand that more needs to be done. And at the end, National Grid and the TSOs of all the European countries have signed a proposal for the UK joining back the SDAC, so implicit market coupling. Post-Brexit, the UK left the internal energy market, and that changes the way we trade electricity, and we'd welcome if we could go back to the previous version. The next topic is CBAM. So CBAM stands for Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Another area of industry consensus is that needs to be revised. The CBAM creates both a non-tariff and a tariff barrier in the North Sea, posing a risk to investment. The trade barrier the CBAM creates will reduce the amount of clean electricity that is exported both from the UK and from the EU. The UK is forecasted to be a net exporter of clean power to Europe in the 2030s. So it'll allow your or all our neighbours access to cheap UK wind power. CBAM will reduce that possibility. It will also increase the amount of curtailment of clean energy power, both in the UK and in the EU, increasing carbon emission. We and our partners have concern that the CBAM will make it more difficult for us to build the necessary cross-border infrastructure that the UK and the EU have both called for. We think there's a relatively straightforward solution to this, the linkage of UK and EU emission trading system. We welcome the government's ambition in that area. This was foreseen in the TCA itself. I'm being told Article 392.6, I'll let other people confirm, explicitly talks about consideration of linking both of the system. As I have mentioned, there is a widely held view that the CBAM is to the disadvantage of not only the UK, but the EU. So we have been reassured by recent statements from the government who are looking to find solutions and to the European for openness to look at them. In conclusion, the attention from the government is welcome, as is how energy is central featuring of the government's relationship reset. We will fully support a strong relationship between the UK and the EU on energy and climate, first and foremost because it will be better for British and European consumers, bringing power prices down, allowing a better use of green energy and increased security of supply for everyone, especially in these times. For a long time, energy cooperation and interconnectors have operated almost under the radar of renewables and nuclear investments, and more recently transmission become really the high focus for the energy sector and policymaker. The criticality to our shared energy security, along with the climate and customer benefit, has in recent years brought them in the forefront. Collaboration and cooperation is fundamental to the UK and EU's energy relationship, and we welcome the continued support of all the European partners, both in the industry, in this room today, and in the government. We are optimistic that this renewed focus on energy collaboration will help us to build the North Sea infrastructure that we need in the future. Thank you very much.
Question. I'll turn to you in a couple of minutes. When I was listening to you, Clara, what struck me was that there's so much kind of common sense there about the uncontroversial benefits of more collaboration. And you said that the UK and EU are physically interconnected energy systems. So how could you go about strengthening that partnership? And linked to that, how much effort do the energy sector more broadly and your company specifically have to expend in trying to educate and expend and convince policymakers what is, to you, I'm sure, just common sense?
Does it work? Yeah. I'll start maybe with the latter, and then I'll move to the first part of the question. Education is really critical because in energy you'll get quite quickly to nerd discussions. You'll hear words like implicit trading and CBAM, and it's very difficult, complex terms for people that are not part of the industry. And for long we have operated under the radar, but what we see now is that the Commission wants to get more involved in this conversation. They are becoming more at the forefront of political debate, and so we are trying to do that political education. One thing we've been really grateful for is the collaboration of European and UK energy transmission system operator. So for instance, on this topic of the carbon border adjustment mechanism or the topic of trading, we have done joint studies, all the TSOs around the North Sea, and so we can clarify that this is not a position of National Grid. This is a position from all the TSOs, all the energy providers around the North Sea, and hopefully that helps getting a bit of that education. In terms of the area where we would focus, I would bring back competitiveness and the North Sea development as the two key priority. I would maybe add a third one, which we now see, which is security of subsea infrastructure. We have all seen, obviously, the incident that have happened, and we really see that what drives some of these incident is deniable plausibility. And deniable plausibility means that some actors can do things on offshore infrastructure, and it's easier than that they are less easily attributable. We really welcome there's some great collaboration between the UK and European intelligence system and defense services, but it's just slightly a bit more I think we could do there to make sure we are removing that deniable plausibility from actors that would want to look at offshore infrastructure.
You mentioned in your intervention, Clara, competitiveness and the impact of high energy prices. Again, this is obviously the new mantra in Brussels, competitiveness, the Draghi report, etc. Has that made the energy sector's life easier because now everybody is singing from the same song sheet? Or do you have challenges, for example, in demonstrating that when you quantify the potential benefits, economic benefits, the cost of benefits of more cooperation, that people don't push back, they actually accept your findings and your data?
Competitiveness is underlined often by the cost of energy. And we see that across Europe, and so where we can do more efforts to bring the cost of energy down, it's generally welcome. I would maybe add two things on that. If you look at the long-term vision, imagine we are in 2050 and all the North Sea is full of offshore wind, and that brings clean power to the UK and clean power to Europe. That helps competitiveness. But the previous minister was discussing about friction. Do you imagine in that world that you still have friction that reduces that competitiveness? That just wouldn't make sense. We also discussed a lot about fisheries today. We understand that fisheries are an important topic. You'll know that offshore infrastructure is actually good for fisheries because it warms up the water, and so it tends up to have more fishes around them. But we are kind of really, we want to make sure that energy is a key topic, and it's not being, it is not losing aspect by being negotiated into larger packages, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. I have one more question for Clara, but before I do, anybody in the audience would like to ask her a question? Yes, we have a roving microphone, Sophie? Or have I stolen all the ones that are available? If not, you can borrow mine, Sophie. Gentleman in the middle row, and then the lady right behind her. You, David, and then the lady behind you.
There's been a lot of commentary about the way in which the UK's internal electricity market operates, with the price differential between electricity and gas on the one hand that is driven by UK government policy hitherto, and to the way in which regional pricing operates within the UK, to the detriment of the areas where energy is produced and in favour of the areas where energy is consumed. My question, in terms of the interaction with the EU energy markets, is whether the dysfunctional UK electricity market is a barrier to effective cooperation, and whether the price signals within the UK don't need to be adjusted in order to facilitate EU-UK transmission cooperation.
It's an interesting perspective on the UK energy market. We are well aware of the debate around regional, zonal, locational pricing. Two things I would say. We haven't seen an impact on the discussion around energy cooperation in the main, and that's because at the end, what underpins this conversation are the fundamentals of the market, kind of the generation mix on both countries, and that stays the same. We are aware, though, that it could create distractions in terms of energy policy at a time where there's a lot in the agenda on the UK energy sectors. And so from a European perspective, we want to make sure that A, that debate is well coordinated with the European, and B, that it doesn't distract from the European focus.
Yes, my name is Margarita Starkevičiūtė. I'm from Lithuania. As Lithuania is also was going to build offshore wind farm and decided not to do it because Sweden decided not to do it, and United States, as you know, also decided not to do it. And with regard to emission trading, as I know, European Commission, this is the subject full of favor in Brussels. So don't you think that you are not on the right way? Maybe you have to do what Mr. Trump suggested, drill, baby, drill, just to tap your gas reserves, as Netherlands also can tap gas reserves, and it won't be a problem anymore for Europe.
Yes, I can pick that up. I would start by saying that in terms of role and responsibility, energy policies sits with the government, and we as energy transmission system operator just build a grid that the government wants us to. We're not deciding the proportion of nuclear or wind or gas and oil. That needs to be done by the different countries. If I can say now my personal opinion, just the US has a huge advantage of resources that just the Europe doesn't have. There is a field in the Netherlands that they've now closed last year, and that had also a lot of other local opposition because of explosions, etc. In the Netherlands. What we do have in terms of resources is a North Sea, which is the most shallow water across the whole world and the highest wind production. So if you would follow the logic of let's use what nature gives us to get the cheapest power, or logical answer would be let's use the North Sea, because that's what nature gives us. That is kind of the cheapest in Europe. Then I guess there's also an argument on the cost of the transition. And in the long term, the transition should bring down the cost. Like any change, there's a question on the cost of the journey to get there, and we are aware of that, and we are working as much as we can to keep that as low and as efficient for our consumers as we can.
Any more questions from the audience? No? In which case I'm going to borrow your microphone, and I'm going to certainly take back mine as well. I have one final question for you, Clara. So as we know, the UK and the EU have aligned climate targets and decarbonisation ambitions, aiming at net zero emissions by 2050. Where do you see more potential convergence on, you mentioned CBAM and maybe the emissions trading scheme? Again, is that such an obvious thing to do that there's no real political pushback? It's going to happen, and how optimistic are you that it is going to happen, this alignment?
What was the sentence? I have the pessimism that the intelligence gave me, but the optimism of the actions that I can achieve, or something like that. We are believing that both of them do bring benefits for the UK and for Europe. And for both of them, we have received support from our European colleagues to push that. Now, we are aware that this will be part of broader negotiation at political level from the Commission, and that will be out of our hands. We are really supportive of a change in the cross-border carbon border adjustment mechanism, and we have received positive signs on that. I think there's a bit of a longer road to go on trading, but we are happy to walk that journey until we get there.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Clara. We have to leave it there. But can I ask you all, the audience, to give a big round of applause to Clara?